Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, 30 years as a business news institution. We're marking Squawk Box's anniversary in a conversation with the Carlyle Group's David Rubenstein, who's been with us for decades.
The Dow started the year under 4,000. 30 years ago.
Yep.
And the most popular TV show, Seinfeld and Friends.
See, those don't seem that long ago to me.
And it is a somber day, remembering 9/11 and the shocking death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. CNBC's Eamon Javers reporting.
You know, we don't know.
There's a manhunt underway. We don't know anything about who the shooter was, what the motive was.
Grappling with a culture that could have encouraged a political assassination with former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy and former Senator Heidi Heitkamp.
But what does it say as us as a country?
It says we need to do better. That's what it says.
It's more than doing better.
Then Lloyd Blankfein, former Goldman Sachs CEO, a little wary about industrial policy and about his own optimism.
I feel very, very good about things, and in fact, but kind of informs my sense of foreboding that I haven't felt this good since 2007 or 1994.
It is September 11th, 2025, and Squawk Pod begins right now. Today on the podcast, three big discussions across three major themes driving the news. We start with philanthropist, private equity pioneer, and amateur historian David Rubenstein, co-founder of the Carlyle Group. He joined Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin on our TV broadcast today. Becky kicks things off.
Joining us right now is our special guest, David Rubenstein. He's co-founder and co-chairman of the Carlyle Group. He's also the owner of the Baltimore Orioles. And David, there are so many directions we could go with you. I was thinking about starting with inflation because we have consumer price index coming up in about an hour and a half. But you sat down and started talking about some numbers that you looked back. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary, and
Right.
You looked back 30 years ago. What struck you when you were going through those numbers?
30 years ago is a long time, but when I look back at it, the Dow started the year under 4,000 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And the big news was, I think in February of that year, the Dow hit 4,000, which was seen as a record. At the end of the year, it finished about 5,000. Today, the Dow is about 45,000, so it's gone up a lot. The price of oil 30 years ago, about $11 a barrel.
63.
And the most popular TV show 30 years ago were Seinfeld and Friends.
See, those don't seem that long ago to me. Those shows
one ended
large.
and the other one replaced the must-see TV on NBC.
Right.
I mean, they weren't on at the same time.
Not correct. And but the most popular TV show turned out to be the O.J. Simpson trial. So last night I couldn't be at your party. I'm sorry. I appreciate your being invited, but there
Why
was.
couldn't you be there?
Well, I had to go to a baseball game.
You're in last place.
Well, hope springs eternal, but we won last night. But I just have a gift for you from somebody who also celebrated the 30th anniversary. It was 30 years ago that Cal Ripken broke Lou Gehrig's record of 2,130 games. So Cal Ripken asked me to give you this jersey.
Wow.
For each of you.
We each get one. Wow.
There you go.
David,
Cal Ripken jersey.
Here you go, Becky Quick.
Thank you.
And remember, think about this. He played 2,131 games to break the record.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he went to 2,632 games.
Wow.
So pretty impressive, 30 years.
I remember watching him going to see
I also have for you a bobblehead of your favorite baseball team owner.
Oh, wow.
Is that really of you?
This is, yes.
Does it nod?
Oh, that's great.
Here, now,
It does everything it's supposed to do.
here,
There you go.
I'm going to take it out of the box. So,
your
on this
own-
show, we did have lava lamps. We also had some bobbleheads, if I recall. There was
So I don't know. Do you have your own bobbleheads?
Was this your idea?
Well, it wasn't my idea, but they gave away 15,000 of them. I didn't. I wasn't my idea.
Can we get that in the camera there?
What do fans want a bobblehead of the
They gave
owner
away
of the-
15,000 of them, but we won't
we
be.
like it, but I don't.
But it's going to be tough to do this because of tariffs. We won't be able to make bobbleheads as readily or as cheaply as we were able to before. So this got in before the tariffs came over.
Then the tariffs are good.
Yeah, what's the cost of a bobblehead? Do you know?
It's a couple dollars.
The manufacturing cost of a bobblehead
Yes.
made in where?
Well, I think they're made
in China.
out of
Made in
this
China.
country.
Yeah.
Made in China.
That's the first thing you're doing.
Right. But maybe we'll be making
Gotta bring
bobbleheads in the United
manufacturing
States
back
soon.
to America, right?
Do we want to be bobblehead makers, sneaker makers?
I don't know.
We want to be AI people here.
But on inflation, clearly the
David,
Fed.
thank you, by the way.
The Fed next week will obviously do something we all expect. I don't think it's going to be a surprise.
You think it's 25 basis points or 50 basis points?
It'd have to be 25 basis points. If the Fed were to go 50 basis points, it would scare the markets that the economy is weaker than the market thinks it is. And I think it would be too much for the market to absorb.
I wanted to talk to you about this in particular because you were in the administration when we saw some runaway inflation back in the
Thank you
late
for
70s.
reminding me.
Well, yeah,
more than 30 years ago.
Well, as somebody who has lived through from an administrative perspective on this and watching how that plays out, lots of people are saying the Fed needs to focus on the jobs part of the mandate at this point because that's where we've seen the weakness. The inflation that had been anticipated has not shown up. How does that sit with you as somebody who has lived with runaway inflation?
When the Fed was set up in 1913, its mission was really inflation and keep the currency in reasonable shape.
It was just one
in
mandate.
1977, under the Carter administration, Congress passed legislation which said you should also worry about unemployment. And so the Fed has this dual mandate. It's like anything. What part of your body hurts the most? Whatever is injured at the given time. So what part of the economy is the thing we should worry about the most? Whatever is out of line the most. So if unemployment is very high, the Fed's going to focus on that. It's really not that high now. We're roughly about 4.2%. Inflation still is not at the Fed target. The target is 2%. We're still about 80 basis points above that. So I think the Fed is still worried about inflation. On the other hand, the pressure they're getting to lower interest rates is too much for probably in the Fed to withstand at this point. And you've got some new people on the Fed board who are probably going to...
I mean, wouldn't they just look at the data, though, and say the jobs picture is much weaker than we had anticipated?
I don't think this is political. I think that for a while, I've thought that the risk is more on growth than on inflation.
I think right now the concern has been inflation. Remember, we predicted a recession last year at this time. A year ago, people were predicting a recession that would happen this year. It didn't happen. The economy is in reasonably good shape. We're not growing at 5% a year, but we're growing for an economy our size reasonably well.
Half of what we thought were added in jobs, 75,000
That's correct.
For the past year. Instead, that totally changes everything. In the 4.2, the weird participation rate moves. Some people say it's closer to 5%, David.
Well, remember, the numbers are debated by many people. Some people don't think the numbers are accurate, as you know. And so I think...
Well, they weren't accurate.
The numbers will be adjusted, of course. But I think that in the end, the Fed is more likely to reduce by 25 basis points than to do anything else.
If inflation's the main thing, they should be raising by 25. If it's not a growth concern, they should be raising by, or at least
the Fed is
pat.
One thing we can be certain is the Fed's not going to raise interest rates.
No, I understand. But if inflation really is the part of the dual mandate that is most important, right? I think they're fighting yesterday's battle from what happened. We went to 40-year highs in inflation. They were sitting on their hands, and now they want to. It's almost like they're fighting yesterday's battle.
Said that he only cared about the inflation side of
the Fed. Should be. Some could argue there shouldn't be two mandates.
Right.
The Fed's target may have been lower than was realistic to get to. The Fed set a 2% target. Right. Maybe they should have had a slightly higher target, and they'd be closer to it. Unemployment is now a concern, and I think for that reason, the economy weakening a bit, and inflation is not such a big problem relative to what they thought. I suspect a 25 basis point cut will happen. And the Fed has been very good about telegraphing what it's going to do. The Fed has not surprised people. If they were going to do 50 basis points, we would probably know by now.
All right, tell us what you think about the economy based on what you see from your portfolio companies, and tell us what you think about AI.
My firm just had its annual investor conference. We had people from all over the world here, large numbers of people. And basically, the people's view is, the investors' view is the economy is in reasonable shape, but they're not sure what the impact of tariffs is going to be. The impact of tariffs was widely predicted to be much more serious than it has been to date. And no one knows when the tariff impact will show up, if at all. We just don't know. But right now, investors have money. They're still investing money. Deals are getting done. Exits are occurring. And IPO market has come back. The number of IPOs have occurred. The Klarna deal just happened. Another deal that I'm involved with, StubHub, is probably going to happen in the not too distant future. And so I suspect that the IPO market is loosening up a bit, and that's probably a pretty good thing and a good sign that the economy is not in big trouble.
And it looks like a decent exit market for private equity money that maybe has been looking for a time to do this?
Exits for private equity have slowed down over the last year or two for all the obvious reasons, but now I think it's coming back, and investors are I think, coming back into the market. They're willing to put money into funds. Funds are being raised at fairly large numbers right now.
You know, David, you brought that out. I could almost make the case that Friends was like the end of linear, not the end of linear TV, but it was so, I remember, because we were here and we used to go to the upfronts, remember?
Well, and do you remember when they supersized it?
That's what I was getting to. It was so impossible to come up with. Jeff Zucker said, I can't find anything.
So extend it.
I can't find anything better than Friends. I don't think we ever did, really, did we? The Voice or something?
Well, Seinfeld was pretty good, too.
Seinfeld was prior, replaced by Friends. Friends was on for like 9 or 10 years, and people still watch it. My kids have seen every single Friends episode, and then there was nothing that was going to help, so they supersized it. Do you remember that? Yeah, they supersized it.
I remember.
Zucker's idea.
To keep it past the top of the hour when the Nielsen boxes.
But Joe, I want to congratulate you. You were the person who was here 30 years ago.
Yes, right? I was.
Yes, he was.
Yes, I was.
So you started it all. And did you expect it would go this long?
Yes.
You did?
No.
Did you expect the Carlyle Group to go as long as it has?
I thought a year or two, and who knew what would happen. But we are now, nearly 40 years old. So who would have expected this?
Let me ask you this: Are you planning to be around till the 50th anniversary? Because I'm going to be here on the 40th and the 50th.
If you're here, I'll be here.
Then let's do it together.
All right.
Let's do it together.
We'll celebrate it in our wheelchairs. We'll be rolled in and we'll celebrate it then, okay?
Saw Xi and Putin. We're going to have all new organs, baby. AI. We're going to stay like this, like we are right now.
Okay, I hope so.
Okay.
But congratulations on your 30th anniversary, and hope you have another 30 more. Okay?
Thanks for the bobblehead.
Okay.
On almost 40.
Thanks a lot.
And good luck. Good luck next year. You know where hope does spring eternal? The Reds are only 2 games back in the wild card now, and you know who they got to catch? The Mets. I mean, that's a good shot. That's a good chance.
Why don't you come to an Orioles game at some point?
I love that part of Baltimore.
We're redoing Camden Yards this year.
Great ballpark.
Gorgeous ballpark.
We're redoing it, and next year it'll be redone, modernized.
You still call them the Birds? I love the Birds.
Yes.
Remember We Are Family versus the Birds?
Yeah, absolutely. All right?
Yeah.
So you're going to come next year, all of you.
David,
thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Next on Squawk Pod, understanding the assassination of Charlie Kirk and creating space for opposing views to meet here on our show. Democrat Heidi Heitkamp, former senator.
And you think, where are we headed as a country?
And former House Speaker Republican Kevin McCarthy.
This is not something we could pass by. This is not something we just report. This is something as an entire nation, we cannot normalize this.
We're back after this break. This is Squawk Pod from CNBC. Here's Joe Kernen.
31 years old. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed during an event at a college in Utah. Eamon Javers is here with us with the latest details in the investigation. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. A horrifying and tragic scene in Utah yesterday, guys, as conservative political influencer Charlie Kirk was shot dead in front of a crowd of thousands at a political rally. According to the FBI and the Utah Department of Public Safety, the shooting happened at approximately 12:20 p.m. local time at a student event with Kirk's group Turning Point USA at Utah Valley University. Kirk was taken to Timpanogos Regional Hospital and pronounced dead hours later. In the chaotic aftermath, police took in 2 suspects. One, George Zinn, was released and charged with obstruction. A second suspect was taken into custody and released after interrogation. Now, authorities say neither man has current ties to the shooting, and a manhunt is on for the shooter. Kirk was an enormously popular figure on the right with a large social media following and regular access to the President of the United States. His YouTube channel had more than 4 million subscribers and had racked up more than 1 billion views. President Trump posted on social media, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me. And now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you." Kirk was 31 years old, Joe. He leaves behind a wife and 2 children.
Yep. Sat right here.
That was us.
3 weeks ago.
I was texting with him on Sunday. We were talking about mainstream media and what how things are being covered down actually the murder that had taken place.
Yeah.
Down was it North Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, his last social media post was about that murder,
right.
And about whether it's appropriate to politicize a murder or not. And at the rally, the video shows that his last words were a discussion of mass shootings in America, as he was then the victim of a shooting himself in that same instance. I mean, just brutally horrific and ironic timing, and it just shows, I think, the degree to which these shootings are just swirling around our society to the point where you can be shot while discussing.
Well, the political shooting, political shooting, obviously.
Yeah.
And we don't even,
we don't know. There's a manhunt underway. We don't know anything about who the shooter was, what the motive was here. Obviously, your mind goes to immediate suspicions, but until they catch that person, we're just not going to know.
I mean, people have already lost their job on TV with some of the response. And finger pointing is obviously not, no one should be doing any finger pointing before we know anything. But all I'll say is Luigi Mangione is not a hero. And watching that play out to this day is a commentary on something that needs to be fixed, or we need to try to, I don't know what, it's a sick commentary on where things have ended up.
Yeah, I don't have anything brilliant to say about this.
I don't either.
Sad.
I don't.
Well, the thing that I do think about is whether we're at some kind of new moment in our society, whether it's a political, we don't know if this is I don't want to call anything a political act, but if it's murder is politically motivated, or whether it's the United Health situation, or whether it's the attempted assassination, effectively, of the commissioner of the NFL that ultimately took the lives of executives literally blocks from here. Or you can go back and think about there was a plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah. Gabby Giffords.
You can look at Gabby Giffords. You can go back Nancy Pelosi and her husband, who were
Steve Scalise. Trump twice.
And 2 assassination attempts last year. I mean, what strikes me about this, Andrew, is that you've got this specter of political assassination hanging over the society, and the focus is sort of lower and lower down in terms of more and more marginal figures, right? I mean, we've always had political assassinations in this country, assassination attempts against presidents, but then when you start to see CEOs and leaders of political organizations and much more diffuse set of potential targets out there, which is what's scary about this. Yeah, I agree.
Well, and I'm not saying, I guess we should have been worried already, but this certainly. I mean, I felt sick. Yes, I really did. I felt sick to my stomach almost all day, all the way through. And now it's September 11th as well, and there's 2 beautiful children and his wife, and I didn't know more. I only. We started corresponding, and I invited him on the show, and he came on the show, and we were texting afterward, thanking me for coming on, and I said, "You got to come on again." It was great, and so it just, I don't know, it's just not, you don't know how to feel about that. I feel sadness and grief, but also anger. That's starting to replace. Well, it won't replace the sadness for his family, but starting to get a little bit angry. And we all got to hold our tongue at this point. I got plenty of things that if it comes out certain ways, there'll be some finger pointing. But right now, the finger pointing isn't appropriate, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I worry about, Joe, is you look at the impact on society broadly, and I think historically, for analogies here, and you look at the Irish Troubles, I think, as sort of a parallel potential cautionary tale, right, where you have this cycle of political violence. One from this side, one from that side, again and again and again. And that anger that you speak to leads to, real rage and then retribution. And then you see that again on the other side, and it just goes and goes and goes. And that cycle of political violence historically has been so difficult to pull out of for societies. And that's, I think, the real fear here as we look at this situation. And, of course, the tragedy for Charlie Kirk and his family, but more broadly for the society that we're in. And to be talking about that on September 11th, and we saw...
I know. That's unbelievable. And President Trump is angry. And he's got to... I think he's got to get, in some of his comments, right, I think he's rightfully angry. But
sure. The question is, how do you channel that?
Rise, right, exactly. We need, a leader at this point, and hopefully he will rise to the occasion. Thank you, though.
Yeah, thank you.
The political world processing the assassination of 31-year-old conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Joining us now, CNBC contributor Heidi Heitkamp. She's a former U.S. senator and former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. He is chairman of the Alpha Institute. We cover everything, obviously. Hasn't been 24 hours. I don't even know what we try to determine or discern about what happened yesterday. Heidi,
I look at it, and this is what I do for a living right now at the University of Chicago. You bring in people with different perspectives and different points of view, and you hope that engages in meaningful and respectful dialogue. And then this happens, and you think, where are we headed as a country? What is going to happen going forward with our civil discourse, with our dialogue, when you can't even, it wasn't like there was a big rally and he was preaching, he was in a debate. And this is tragic, and one person could be taking away that opportunity from literally thousands to hear a diverse point of view and to respect First Amendment. And we have got to fix this.
Easy to finger point at this point, Kevin. I just guess we can't, can we, Mr. Speaker? We can't, can we draw any conclusions from this? Because it has, for every, you talk about Charlie Kirk, and then I immediately saw people saying Paul Pelosi, just almost whataboutism, which was frustrating, because this looked, we don't know yet, but it looked out on the surface as almost an assassination of someone for his viewpoints.
It was an assassination. The shooter was 200 yards away. It pinpointed him. For those who didn't know Charlie, I mean, I met him like 10 years ago. This guy was a dreamer. He wasn't in this, it was more of a cause of movement, what he believed in, and it was about letting people on both sides debate on a college of what it's known for.
Which we didn't see a lot of for a couple of years. Certain speakers weren't even welcome on college.
But if you look at this is like where America was in the 60s. I mean, everybody has to have, you can't sit there and say, oh, it's a sad day. You have to look at what nation are we? Who do we want to be? Yeah. If an individual, because how did Charlie portray himself? He didn't go there to speak to people who only believed in him. If you had a difference of opinion, you got to go to the front of the line. You got to challenge him. That's what you want on a college campus. But somebody went there. Somebody had to have expertise to literally assassinate a person. And it's almost like every month we hear something else about this. This is not something we could pass by. This is not something we just report. This is something as an entire nation, we cannot normalize this. This is bigger than who we are. Yeah. This is, I went back and I was listening to Robert F. Kennedy, how he announced when Martin Luther King died, And this is where we revolted back to. I don't know that we move forward from this without everybody questioning, what nation are we?
Well, it wasn't just normalized, and we talked about Luigi Mangione and United Healthcare.
It's going to every
that was celebrated, and
yes.
And I saw celebrations yesterday on social media. I saw Trump next on social media yesterday.
Yeah, those opinions, those celebrations used to be in private, and now they're on social media. So all of a sudden, people get this reflective. Oh, that's what people think. The absolute vast majority of people in this country do not want to see political violence. They do not want to see this. They don't want to see 2 orphaned little girls. And so we've got to figure it out. But the leadership in this country needs to step up, like you did during the Scalise shootings, where everybody came together in Congress. It wasn't like, oh, these were Bernie supporters. It was, we've got to pull together. And I think that's a great example of leadership.
But look, Charlie was not elected.
Yeah.
I met Charlie because he didn't even go to college. He worked with young people to get them involved in ideas of political process. He was the very first guest of Gavin Newsom. He would go across the aisle. And these are the people they want to target? It wasn't like somebody walked up to him and got in a fight with him. This person sat, knew he was coming and had to be an expertise and did it in front of everyone.
So here's the question. So I think this is actually interesting because it also crosses generations. By the way, I have two sons who are 14 who are intimately familiar with Charlie Kirk. They know him. They like Charlie Kirk. They think they were fascinated by his opinions. And so I think there's a whole, it's not just, and so the question is, how do you, or how do political leaders, and what generation is going to reach out to, I mean, I think this is one of those, this is actually like a moment, like a true moment that I think is scarring. And the question is, I mean, and this is beyond sending our sympathies to his family and everything else, I'm just saying, as a country, how do you communicate to all these different generations about this? Because I do think that he touched something that I'm not sure everyone in our audience even appreciates.
I don't think this audience understands it. There's millions of young people across this country that maybe not have met him, but he made a difference in their lives and on how they thought about things. Right. And they would interact with him because of the social media. And how are they going to react today? That's why when you look back to the 60s, he was a cause and a movement of what he allowed, and it just got taken away. Yeah. For why?
Yeah. I think, Andrew, it's just going to depend on how do leaders react. Do we see polarization and look what you did kind of thing, or do we see it is time to lower the temperature in this country, it's time to engage in meaningful dialogue, respectful dialogue. And what we saw yesterday, I think, was not that coming together. It was a lot of schadenfreude. It was a lot of, look, this is horrible. And how do you, if I'm on a college campus, I can tell you he would draw a big crowd at the University of Chicago because people want to hear a different side of the argument. Young people are much more sophisticated. They are not there to just listen to what they believe. They're there to listen to other beliefs. And this is a tragic moment because how much of that have they taken away on college campuses yesterday?
The two respective echo chambers, and you can, don't need to mention any names, but in mainstream media, there are two echo chambers, and they went exactly where you thought they would go. Yeah, but and that's not helpful. And I don't know how does the president, what do you expect the president, you know him well, he's angry. And I would hope for better angels, but I don't know how you can have better angels when he has to, though, don't you think?
If I was the president, I would be angry. I mean, the president, same thing yesterday, somebody was on trial for the second person who tried to kill him. I'm sure from an emotional point of view, not only how well he knew Charlie, but he looked at him as almost a family member. There's so many times the interaction there, the celebration. But from a person that he got shot in the ear, and think about how that could have been him with just a quarter of an inch.
Kevin, you said you went back and looked at Robert F. Kennedy's speech after Martin Luther King was shot. I'm not familiar with it. How did he address it?
He was literally in a rally in Indianapolis, and they didn't have social media, and he goes before the crowd, and he tells them to put the signs down, and he says, I have to tell you, Martin Luther King was just assassinated. But then he goes on to say, what type of nation are we? Who are we as a country? And how do we want to move forward? And he talks about his own brother. And he raised the issue of how Martin Luther was killed doing what he believed in, right? But he was killed by a white man. He goes, but my brother was killed by a white man too. So how do we move forward as a nation? He raised this tremendous issue that I believe today for a generation, for all these young people, we can't just report this and ignore this. What are they going to go through emotionally and seeing from a basis? You talk about both sides get together. That's exactly what he was doing yesterday. Mm-hmm. If you didn't agree with him, and it wasn't just in a classroom, anybody, and you got special treatment if you disagreed with him to come forward, why?
Are you optimistic about?
Today I'm not.
That's what I mean. With social media, is it possible to conjure up better angels when it's just a cesspool of?
This nation can do anything it wants to do. But this has happened. I'm sorry I'm emotional, but this has happened so many times. This last little bit, for no apparent reason. And Charlie believed, he lived his life in a way, his family, his young kids. I mean, he was, I apologize.
No, don't apologize.
I just watched him. He loved being a father. He loved being a husband. He loved what he did. I met him because he inspired kids to run for political to run for office, and it was extraordinary. And then for your audience, he was an entrepreneur. He had to raise the money, but how did he raise his money? Because what he achieved. Mm-hmm. And to be struck down. He didn't do this because he wanted to become an elected position. He could have gone into the administration. He didn't. He didn't do any of that. And he was struck down in a nation that we believe in a college, that this is a place we could have these debates. It's just not right. It really isn't.
Kevin, you shouldn't ever apologize for your humanity in feeling this. It's a horrible, horrible situation.
But what does it say as us as a country?
It says we need to do better. That's what it says.
It's more than doing better.
And we need to listen to what Andrew's saying, because those 14-year-olds are watching, and they want to know where's the leadership, and how did this happen, and how is it not going to happen again? And we always forget that part. And the part that I think you played when Scalise was shot on the baseball field, that was a moment that we should all reflect on.
Didn't help,
and
did it?
Yeah, because it was a coming together. It was a lack of blame. And it was we are all in this together. And if we want to have a democracy in this country, we have to cure the problem of political violence. Political dialogue needs to be respectful, and we cannot tolerate on either side, regardless of what people have said in the past, regardless of what people have done. We cannot tolerate this, because the best people in this country will not step up to serve, will not step up to have an opinion. They will say, it is not worth it in my lifetime. And that is not good for where we are as a country.
I'll leave it at that. Senator, thank you, and love you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Welcome back. You're listening to Squawk Pod, where we have been marking 30 years of Squawk Box this week, including today's date on the calendar, September 11th. Here's what Squawk Box sounded like on this day in 2001.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you right now. We have what appears to be a very serious. Is that the World Trade Tower? Yeah. This is
Mark. A plane hit it? They think so.
This is one of the towers of the World Trade Center in Manhattan, which is clearly heavily involved in a smoke situation, and one would assume there is fire.
Well, we're celebrating 30 years of Squawk Box this week. This morning, we're also reflecting on September 11th. Our next guest was in Lower Manhattan on that fateful morning. Joining us right now is former Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein. This is quite a morning, because there's a lot of things that we've been talking about. Charlie Kirk, 9/11.
No, it's kind of, I don't want the whole conversation to be so sober, but it's a sober moment to reflect on. And of course, I was downtown all day, worked downtown. And every night on TV, these lawyers run these ads for people who got diseases from breathing in that stuff. Of course, I had lymphoma, so I always get reminded when I watch late night TV of the consequences of working alongside the World Trade Center that day, and for months afterwards.
I didn't connect those two, but yes, you did. And
yeah.
You're better than ever. But I remember, and you can't say for sure, but why wouldn't you at least think there's some linkage there?
Well, people who weren't downtown get it, and people who were downtown don't get it, so you never know, but it's an environmental thing. And so every time I see one of those ads for people to join some class action or something, I don't do it, but I think about the consequences of that day.
What do you think about it on a morning like this? Meaning, we're 24 years later, and to the extent that there's generations of people who may not even understand it or know it. What took place that day?
I think of circle of life, Simba. Life goes on, and people were too young to remember it. And I was born, after world. People in World War II. Did I live through World War II? The other day I was talking to somebody, and they were reflecting, and they said that their nephew didn't know enough about Vietnam. And I said, well, he was born further from Vietnam than you were from World War I. Right. And so it's just the nature of things. And, it's good. It's part of the charm of life. You don't get overly saddled with the consequent, with things that just came from the past, and we can look forward as we're going to do this morning.
Okay, so let's do that right now.
Yes.
Which is, I always think of you as someone who thinks about risk, as a risk manager. So where are we today in America in terms of our economy, in terms of all of the different cross currents? We got tariffs, we've got issues about the Federal Reserve and what they're going to do or not do. We've got questions about the independence, we've got geopolitics.
We certainly have a wall.
What does the risk manager that is Lloyd Blankfein say about all this?
We have a wall of worry, and look, we're about to lower interest rates into a bull market. So I would say the setup for the markets is pretty benign, and we can go over a lot of details, but everybody else, talks about that. And then you have to worry about a lot of things that could go wrong, which, I always lived life, spent 99% in the 1% of the things that could go wrong, so explains a lot of my unhappiness all the time. But the way but people are hard pressed to come up with it. People don't see a lot of leverage, and they don't see this, and they don't see that. The way I used to try to draw people out is I never used to say what could go wrong. I'd say, you just, you were swimming in the Arctic, you got frozen in an ice floe, you melted down, and a year later, I'm telling you the market crashed. Tell me what happened. And then people could come out and say the likeliest things that probably could have happened. And it usually involves around leverage in this time now, probably credit, leverage in places that you don't see it. And there's certain environmental hazards that are here. And then I used to think to myself, if I could think of it, that's probably the last thing that would happen. But I look at credit spreads being so narrow, so much money going to private credit, people trying to, goose their returns a little bit by leveraging up in kind of odd ways, at the portfolio level or other levels.
Right.
And so, leverage starts to think in. I think of the places where this is being done. A lot of these assets are being put into insurance companies where people are people kind of assured because the long term, they're investing premia for longer term liabilities. But if I were an insurance regulator at some point, I might say, are those assets really worth what you say they're worth? And are they going to come? Is it going to come to pass that you'll have the money to pay your liabilities? And let's look at that and let's mark them and let's take. There are a lot of things like that I would be going out and we'd going around the table, and then somebody would say, well, I don't think this or that, and I'd say, well, I don't care what you think. Just tell me what might happen.
But do you say to yourself, though, these are sort of 1% risks, and otherwise, as you said, we're in this benign environment, which I think you're saying is a bullish environment and continues apace? Or do you say
there's a lot of 1% risk, but it's not a 1% risk that something bad will happen. It always look. We had, the crisis of the century roughly every 4 or 5 years. The debt crisis, emerging debt crisis in 1994. Big crisis, 1998, long-term capital and the Russia debt default, dot-com bubble, 2000, 2001, 2007.
We're quick learners?
We're kind of, well...
Or are you saying we're due?
I'm saying we're due. And it doesn't matter that you can't see from where it's coming from. Now, having said that, the other thing I used to ask people all the time is, it's so... You sound so much smarter when you're bearish. Then I used to say, what do you think? And then I said, what are you? How are you positioned? And,
right.
I have all these bearish thoughts, but I'm 100% in equities.
Personally, right now, you are.
Yeah, because because we're about to lower interest rates into a bull market. Anything having to do, there's anything having, people who can't spell AI, but will buy anything that's associated with it. People think it's it's an epic moment.
And do you think it's an epic moment? Is the trader that is Lloyd Blankfein buying all of the mag set? Like, when you say you're 100% in equities, what does the portfolio look like?
I think it's a phenomenal moment. It might be. I'm not a great technologist, and I've lived through waves of technology, and I experienced things that changed the world, and I experienced things that changed our fortunes because we overinvested in stuff.
Lloyd, have you ever not been 100% in equities? Was there ever a time where you thought, okay, this is getting scary, I'm going to take some money
And let me ask the corollary to that, because we go back a ways and we've been in different forums. We've listened to you and off the record things in foreign countries, that have a lot of skiers and stuff that we cannot talk about. But we've talked to you. Have always had a lot of things that concerned you, and you say it's 1%, and you're a risk guy. I just want to know, and answer Becky's question too. on a scale 1 to 10, you're always worried about all these things. Is it more or less right now than normal? Because that's the only way as a risk guy. And you've always been able to stay 100% invested, even though you're always.
Well, listen, we had, you divide the world into, your outlook in two parts. What do you think is going to happen? What do you bet on? How do you position yourself? And then you get into risk management mode, where I don't care what anybody thinks. Just what could possibly go wrong? Let's look around the corners.
That's when you're managing for a firm.
Right. Well, I think about that.
Versus what you're
So
doing for your personal.
the answer is, I think the world is, I think the investing market is all tailwind, except it can't possibly be. So I have to work. I have to work to find. I work to find things. But that's the nature of my. That's the nature of my life.
I think when you were managing other people's money, you were probably more cautious with it than potentially your own. I'm just guessing. Or is there a time where you were ever not 100% involved in equities?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. There was a time when you took money off the table.
But I don't know. I don't know if it correlated with what the reality. I used to. I'd say to people, if people looked, very happy and the world was benign, I'd say to people, I haven't felt this good since 2007. Or I haven't felt this good since early 1994. I thought the birds were chirping and the sun was shining in those periods of time, and who knew?
But I guess that's what I would ask. Is there a time that you've ever taken money off the table?
Yes.
I feel what caused you to do that?
To answer your question, in the risk-taking side of things, I feel very, very good about things, and in fact, but kind of informs my sense of foreboding. Yeah. That I haven't felt this good since 2007,
right?
Or 1994.
But you don't know when it's going to come, so there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Well, I think you have to protect the tail risks. I wanted to own lottery tickets, not write them.
Right.
And you start to look at, in times like this, I want to go around and I want to see, what's really susceptible. What could go, if something went wrong, what would the impact? And so you can move up the credit curve and you can move up the higher value curve, and I think that's not a bad thing to do now. And it happens to conform to my view of the market, because I think the most exciting companies, the fastest growth, usually size is the enemy of growth.
Right.
But here you have the biggest companies who are positioned to take advantage of the new technologies because they can afford to, have been the best ones to go in. But then you go, and other people are coming to the market today with companies that are the next level down, the next level down, next level down, and those are riskier.
But so here's the thing that I can't figure out. You've got the tariff piece sort of layered on top of the situation. You have the AI piece, which could have an impact on employment. We have this last year, by the way, BLS saying that actually maybe things have not looked from an employment perspective nearly as good as we thought. And then you got Jamie Dimon just a couple days ago saying he thinks the economy is weakening. And yet the markets seem to love all of this because they think the Fed is lowering rates.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a weakening economy and not a weak economy, you have favorable. You're looking forward to favorable interest rate policy that will be positive for the market. If it continues to go and it becomes a weak economy, that will be bad. So you're running the 100-yard dash, but you can't run through the tape. If you run through the tape, that's a bet. You'll run into a wall and get hurt.
When you think, though, about where this all heads, do you think that there will be a slowdown in the next 12 months? Putting aside the larger issue of whether there's a crisis.
It feels like it'd be a slowdown. But again, the official sector has a lot of ammunition. We're not at zero interest rates. We're at 4 and something. We could take interest rates down a lot. We reduce the balance sheet. You could take the Fed's balance sheet up a lot if you would. There's things that could be, there's ammunition that could be done. By the way, it doesn't mean it'll be effective. And the reason why you have cycles is, it's like the beginning of the conversation, people forget.
Right.
And so you're kind of doomed to, if history doesn't repeat it, at least rhymes.
What do you think of the Fed independence issue? You've been a pretty outspoken guy over the years.
Oh, my God, there's no other side to that issue. We're a big borrower. If we were a corporate borrower, you'd want the CFO to the company to be reassuring to its lenders that I'm going to really protect the value of my company so I can be in a position to pay you back and not default. If you're the United States borrower and you borrow in dollars, you can always print dollars, so you'll always be able to pay back dollars. How does the U.S. government default? It defaults by inflating the currency so that the dollars it pays back aren't worth as much. Well, if you evolve to a position where it looks like we're going to inflate the currency, that's like telegraphing to the market that I'm much more likely to default than you had previously thought. Well, if you're likely to default, I'm either not going to lend to you or I'm going to charge you a higher interest rate. That's why when everybody wants interest rates lower, mortgages and long-term interest rates low, lowering short-term rates might not get you there. It might suggest to people more of a tolerance for inflation and therefore higher interest rates in the future. So I think this Fed independence, protecting the dollar, the currency, the integrity, that you'll be there to pay back dollars that are as valuable as the dollars you loan to me, that's key. And anybody who undermines that is just gaining disadvantage without any corollary advantage.
I got one other one for you. Capitalism and industrial policy. You lived through a period of bailouts where the government started to take stakes in the banks. We saw this obviously with General Motors at the time as well. And I mean, you remember Occupy Wall Street. You remember all of these views about this idea that the government was going to be involved in this. There were people screaming this was socialism, this is France, this is this is that. So here we are today, and we have the government, I don't think they were in a crisis, trying to take stakes in Intel and maybe a component part of NVIDIA's sales to China or AMD or this or that, or these special shares in U.S. Steel or Nippon, I should say. What do you make of that?
Look, industrial policy is generally not good, except sometimes it is. I'm glad we didn't build Al Gore's information superhighway and spend trillions of dollars doing that 5 minutes before the cloud and the internet surfaced up. So I think it's except sometimes it's good, like for national defense, or we're missing an industry or a key thing.
Is CHIPS Act good, and do we need to do something?
I think the spirit behind the CHIPS Act is, I understand it. I'm always adverse to picking winners and losers, but if the market is failing in some way and other people's price advantages means that we will never have it and it's essential to our national security, then I could see subsidizing it. And it's risky, and generally you can be wrong, but it's also wrong to do nothing and just watch something erode like that. So I think in the long run it's good. And if the government is going to subsidize something for those very good reasons and not for wrong reasons, then it should get an economic stake, but it shouldn't have control. In other words,
how do you feel about a sovereign wealth fund? Because that may be the next step.
Well,
in all
that's
of
a
this.
borderline. Look, I wouldn't do that. I don't think it. Look, anytime the government is involved, look, think of you can't close a fire station in New York, whether or not they need one there, because it gets into the politics. You can't close a military base because the community or the local congressman is powerful and doesn't want that base closed. The government, for reasons that we all understand, can't make very good decisions. So they should be out of the decision-making business as much as possible. But it doesn't mean that if they're forced by circumstances, national security reasons or other reasons, to make an investment in a sector of the economy, I don't mind them getting a passive stake. They should get a passive stake.
Thank you. I left the set that President Trump actually called in. Well, and I figured I'd take that call. Happy anniversary. Happy 30 years. He loves what we do. Loves what we do every morning. Said, make sure you tell Becky and Andrew that he loves what.
What about me? He doesn't want to wish me happy.
He did mention Bob Kraft, and thought that was a great interview. He's devastated about Charlie Kirk, and said that what a guy, what a great individual. And he said he helped him greatly in the last election, and thinks that Charlie Kirk could have been president someday. He was such a talented guy. Then he went on to say the country will heal. He's focused on what he has been focused on, and he says, I'm focused on winning. If the country wins, and if I do everything I can to help the country win, that we're all going to be able to come together again. So that was his message.
It's kind of sober. I used to think that these times aren't as, everyone thinks these are the worst times. And then I remember 68, in the late 60s when you had all these bigger problems, shootings on campuses, all the things that went wrong in that period of time, tanks going into Czechoslovakia, all those things in 68. And I used to say, and then we had political assassinations. We don't have that today. Well, guess what? We're catching up to the worst times. And it's terrible. The problem is, big country, 350 million people, and I know people will say, we're going down the tubes, but 350 million people are going to get wackos. And it doesn't mean we're necessarily going down the tubes, but, we have to watch out for, if a very small percentage applied to a very big number, you can get plenty of wackos.
Lloyd, thank you very much.
Good seeing you guys.
Coming in.
And congratulations on your anniversary.
Great. Thank you. Soon you're going to be looking at a lot there. It is a live shot of the September 11th memorial in Lower Manhattan, where a remembrance ceremony is being held. A moment of silence is going to begin promptly at 8:46. As you know by now, that is the time when the first plane struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And that's going to be followed by the reading of the names of those who lost their lives on September 11th. It's now been 24 years, 2001.
Right, quick, march.